Hello, my name is Corinne Stroud, and this is the Chapter 14 Cafe. We are going to be discussing objectives 1, 2, and 3. Each slide does have audio. If you click it, it'll just go right, after everything, after I am done talking. You can pause it to get any information or write down anything you need, or you can just go ahead and click and go to the next slide. So we're going to go ahead and start. So just go ahead and click to the next slide. Okay, in this slide we're going to be talking about Learning Objective 1. Learning Objective 1 is to distinguish between data and information and explain the role of information in systems and business. Alright, so we are on part 1 of Learning Objective number 1, which is distinguish between data and information. Data is the raw facts and figures that may or may not be relevant to a business decision. And information is the knowledge gained from processing that data. So let's say if we're taking a survey and we want to see how many people like, one car versus another, just like I took a survey today on the phone about San Onofre, and the data that he collected is just my answers. Now, the information that he inputted into the computer, which is, somewhat likely, less likely, more likely, stuff like that, is going to be processed through an application software into information. And that information will show, okay, well, this many people think that the Dodge Challenger is better than the Ford Mustang. Now, the terms data, information, and knowledge are frequently used for overlapping concepts. Reason being is because when you think of the actual definition, the full definition of data, most people don't think of data as just being, raw facts and figures. Um, Information is the information that is collected from that data, and the knowledge is, um, when you present it in a report form or in like an, like showing like a pie chart or a table. Um, Data on its own carries no meaning. For data to become information, it must be interpreted and take on a meaning or become information. Um, like I said before, the data that you've collected, you would interpret that into information, like doing calculations. Let's just say if 30 people, liked the Challenger, 10 people liked the Ford Mustang. Then you would take the number of people, which is 40 people, and then divide 30 by 40 and 10 by 40, and that'll give you a percentage. That is the information. Now, when you do a pie chart saying, or a Venn diagram, or a table, or anything like that, then that's showing the knowledge. Okay, well, see, this is the influx of people, this way, and this is the influx of people that way. So someone like I said, someone who might interpret this information and make a report out of it is considered providing knowledge. I just use report as something that's kind of general, because most of the time, when you're working in a large firm or a large company, you would put together reports of your findings, or put together reports of accounts that you've gotten, or put together reports of financial statements or things like that. So that's pretty much the differentiation between data and information is data is the facts you've collected, information is just how you process it. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, now we're on to learning objective part 2, which is explain the role of information systems in business. An information system is an organized method for collecting, storing, and communicating past, present, and projected information on internal operations and external intelligence. Most information systems today use computer and telecommunications technology, which is true because you would have, a boardroom with members, and they will use the phones with the speakers, put them on speakerphone and have conference calls. They're also starting to do now business conference calls, where you excuse me, where you can call anyone in any country, and have that type of video conference. The chief information officer of a company, which would be the CIO, um, is the executive responsible for managing a firm's information system and related computer technology. So I'll stop there for a second. The CIO is the person who, because you have the CEO, which is the chief executive officer, who's over all of the executive business, and then you have the CIO, which is over all of the operations and information systems and how people communicate within the workplace. That would be his or her job. So this person reports directly to the CEO, and in current trends, the CEO and the CIO are actually starting to become more business partners because to have a business to work properly, you have to have someone who can, manage the business, talk to people, do that kind of thing. And then you need someone in the background who's really managing all the information in the background and behind the CEO. So that's pretty much what's going on in this slide. Let's go to the next one. Next, we're going to learning objective number 2. I put 2 parts for this because I think that there was a lot of information just to put on a couple slides. So we'll start with part 1, which is list the components of information systems. And part 2 is list the different types of information systems. Okay, most of the time when we think of information systems, computer-based information systems come to mind. When we think of that because everything we do, whether it's online or in a store, everything is computerized, including when we go to the library. They're starting to abolish the Dewey Decimal System card catalog to make the computerized version of it, which I think is really nifty, so you don't have to search through cards. So a computer-based information system is the network of information systems that rely on computer and related technologies to store information electronically in an organized, accessible manner. Here's an example for you. I've been seeing the infomercial lately about the new scanner machine where you can actually put your business cards and your Rolodex and things like that, and you can actually store it into a program on your computer that's more easily accessible. Think of it as something like that. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in addition to the definition for computer-based information systems, every system like that has 4 components. This slide, I can only get 2 of them on here, so I'll talk about 2 of them. Computer hardware. So you're looking at the actual physical items. That includes a laptop, your iPad, your iPhone, your Android smartphone, your BlackBerry, your personal digital assistant, anything that's an actual physical piece of hardware, a physical piece of matter um, that you can use for input. As for the software, you have operating systems like Microsoft Windows 7, 8 that's coming out sometime, Linux, Red Hat, Mac, Unix. Um, you know, I used to work for a job where we had ResMax, which was another type of operating system. And then you have application software. That's easy to think of when you think of, apps for your phone. How they have, Angry Birds. Those are games, but those are still applications. But we're going to talk about business here. So you're looking at application software like Microsoft Office, Adobe Suite, Oracle PeopleSoft, any type of software that is an application on your computer. So technically, like Internet Explorer is an application because that is an application software that helps you to get onto the internet. Same with Firefox and Google Chrome, and things like that. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, continuing on here with the 4 components. Number 3 is telecommunications and computer networks. So you're looking at the servers, cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, things like programs like Skype. Um, the internet really is a telecommunications and computer network. It's a massive one, but it is. These are the things that are going to help you connect to other people. Uvu is another one that's like that. So number four is data resource management. So that's maintaining a virtual library of databases that can be accessed for information. The only real database program that I can think of is Microsoft Access. I could be wrong. I haven't really went through and checked them out. I think QuickBooks is another one, but that's more for financial accounting. Um, Access is kind of general, like you can use it, as a phone book, or you can use it for financial accounting, but it's kind of a little bit more open, so to speak. And this is kind of like offset, but I wanted to add the definition of what a database is, which is a centralized integrated collection of data resources. So let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so on to part two, we have the different types of information systems. There are two major ones, and they have little categories underneath. So we'll start with the first one, which is operational support systems. Operational support systems are designed to produce a variety of information on an organization's activities for both internal and external users. So operational support systems would be things like a transaction processing system, which you swipe your, like, not the actual point of sale system or not the actual transaction register, but like the Visa terminals where you slide your card. It connects to the point of sale system, but it's its own system as well because Visa has to read that, like a credit card machine. Transaction processing systems, which would be the point of sale system, record and process data from business transactions. So, when you walk into a store and you pay, when the person scans your merchandise, they're scanning a UPC barcode that goes into the point of sale system that can pull up from a database of inventory of what it is, how much it is, how many of them that they have in the store, things like that. Process control systems monitor and control physical processes. So you're looking at, I'll use the example from the book. You have a steel mill, which may have electronic sensors linked to a computer system monitoring the entire production process. You have process control systems in a lot of industrial warehouses where they have to control what's going on, especially with the use of robotics now in the industrial settings. So you have to have some type of control system that can control those robotic arms to do those, little things the human hands can't quite do. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. All right, so we're on this second part, which we're talking about information systems. So now we have the management support systems, which is a network of information systems that is designed to produce reports to managers and other professionals. So we're looking at um, several different types of management support systems. You have the decision support system, which gives direct support to business people during the decision making process, which people might use this um, to make charts for reports that helps them, kind of make decisions for them. You have an executive support system, which lets senior executives access the firm's primary databases, often by touching the computer screen, pointing and clicking a mouse, or by using voice recognition. You can use a combination of all three because the mouse still isn't on the out yet. So you would see, like, let's just say they were accessing QuickBooks and looking up the financial reports for the company. That would be an executive support system because most of the time bosses are the only ones that have access to that, unless it's the accountant. And then you have an expert system, which is a computer program that imitates human thinking through complicated sets of if-then rules. So this system is the type of system that would be almost like artificial intelligence. That will try to, okay, well, if 3 times 4 is 12, then this. So kind of like how humans try to rationalize things. Well, if I go to the store, then I'll be able to get such and such and such and such and such. So expert systems are used for a variety of business purposes. So you're looking at the main one, which has kind of gotten a lot of people into trouble lately, is the whole debt problem. these expert systems are kind of like Experian and Equifax and TransUnion, if I'm not mistaken, are the big three. And they determine credit limits for credit card applicants. Another example from the book is monitoring machinery in a plant to predict potential problems or breakdowns. Um, so you're looking at something that might monitor, like let's take the San Onofre problem for example. An expert system would be the system that would have detected that leak and that crack in one of that reactor. Um, then you're looking at one more example from the book, which is determining optimal plant layouts. We talked. I think we read about this in another chapter or two ago, where you have manufacturing, where you have an expert system that will tell you exactly where you would want to place a certain machine. Like you wouldn't want to place a very sensitive machine near a certain type of wiring because maybe it might mess with the magnetic around it. So let's go to the next slide. All right, so we are done with objective 2, and now we're going on to learning objective 3, which is outline how computer hardware and software are used to manage information. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so we're going to go back to the beginning, and we're going to think of hardware as being the data and software as being the information. So if you think about it, data would be like if you had a hard drive, just a regular external SATA hard drive. You can't really do anything with just a hard drive by itself. I mean, it's not, you have to plug it up to a motherboard. I mean, aside from getting into the real deep computer aspect of it, you have to plug it up to a motherboard and then that information gets sent out to the monitor. So, I mean, a hard drive is actually useless without any type of input and output devices. Um, and software would be like the information. The software in your computer is going to interpret what the hard drive has on it, so to speak. So, even though Windows 7 is installed on my hard drive, I would not be able to use my hard drive without Windows 7. I wouldn't also be able to store anything on my hard drive without Windows 7. So let's see. With that stated, let's move on to the next slide. All right, so as I stated before, hardware is the tangible elements of a computer system. So we're talking about hard drives, your CPU, your motherboard, your video card, your DDR3 RAM or mainframes, mid-range systems. Once again, any type of physical thing that you can hold in your hands, aka tangible, is, the hardware for the system. So, input is going to come from these devices. So, you're going to, let's say you have your mouse, and your mouse is a completely 100% input device. So, as you move your mouse around the screen, or move your mouse around your mouse pad, the operating system is going to take that, it's going to interpret that, and then it's going to display it on the screen as showing your mouse pointer, whatever you happen to have. I just happen to have the regular arrow. But that the operating system software is going to process that input from the mouse, and the monitor is the output where you can actually see where your mouse is going. And then, on top of all of that, you have application software added into that. So let's say you want to type up a report for your boss. Your boss really wants you to type up this report of a convention that you just went to. So what would happen is the keyboard is the input. You would type, what you need. The CPU, hard drive, processing system on the the inner workings of the computer is going to take that typing and process that information. The application software that you choose to use, I choose Microsoft Office. My husband usually chooses OpenOffice, but um, you would the application, let's say Microsoft Word, would help you complete that task. So you go from inputs from your hardware to the software on your computer processing that information, and then you have the application, which is also aiding you with that. So when you're at a job, most of the time we use some type of operating system, some type of application software. When I worked at Hilton, I actually used a lot of things. I used Microsoft Outlook. I used a thing called ResMax, which was a database of all of the Hilton hotels and all of the information. I also used a program called Horizon, which was a program made specifically for Hilton, which was their booking system. So we would put all the reservations into that booking system, and that system it would get to the hotels. So when you think of business, you think of business as you have to have some type of, you know, system and software to work with. If not, usually, things don't work out quite that well. So the next slide that I have is actually going to help explain this a little bit. So we'll go on to that next slide. All right, even though this is a little off topic, I promise it ties right in. I put a picture of the information cycle here on this slide for you because, to be honest, most humans, computers, businesses, everything works this way. This is like the cycle of life almost, aside from, babies being born and death and things like that. So you're looking at gathering data. So you would gather, like I said earlier, data on a survey. Then you would process that data. That output from that processing of that data would be the information, and then turn it around and storage also. Computers are like this as well. It processes information, stores and or processes data and stores it, and also gives you the output and or the information on the screen. So this is the learning objective number 3. Let me get to that. And that is how computer hardware and software are used to manage information. To add a little extra onto that, when you think of cloud computing is the same way, where a storage of information doesn't really help you manage it per se, but it helps you store information. Um, Databases are really what helps you, manage loads of information. Excel workbooks are the same way, where you can have different workbooks, different ways to click to it. I tend to love Excel for database work, even though Access would probably be the best way to do it. But yeah, programs like Access helps you manage information that's given to you from data. And like I said, most businesses use, some type of database management system to manage inventory, to manage sales, to manage operations, to manage logistics, to manage anything really. Um, so we're almost done. Hang in there. All right, so we are at the end of our cafe. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to post anywhere. I will be, even though I am out of town at the moment because I have a relative who is in the process of passing away, I will definitely be getting to any questions because I do keep my computer with me at all times. But before you go, I wanted to give you some questions to answer. In your opinion, what should the ideal information system contain? And number 2, do you think that the Dewey Decimal System is as effective as a computer-based information system in the library? Now I'm going to elaborate a little bit on this question. Do you think that the old card catalogs, the old card Dewey Decimal System, is as effective as, let's just say, Access or an actual computer database? Um, yeah, and that should be it. Like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to post. And thank you once again for listening to me garble on the Chapter 14 Cafe Objectives, Learning Objectives 1, 2, and 3. Thank you, and have a good night.